When I look at our history, I realize that our history is not negotiable. It's not defined by slavery. It is a profound history, and we need to teach it in honesty. Good evening, good Saturday evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, good evening, good evening. We're about 30 minutes later than what I usually would like to get on and do this. This is our Saturday Erudition Network Saturday wrap-up session where we come on a little bit later on a Saturday night to talk about the things that we talked about over the week, but also to provide people the opportunity who were not able to get on with us on Thursday or Monday or Thursday, and now even Wednesday when the boys are on, to get into the live chat, maybe re-ask a question, and for us to re-engage with you on the things that we've talked about over the last week. This is a new attempt to do that because got so many comments in from different people saying that they could not necessarily join us on the evenings in which we're on during the week, maybe because of work, maybe because of school, different reasons. So this is our attempt to be able to allow people to get on later in the evening on a Saturday to maybe discuss some of the things that we talked about for this week, and also for us to kind of re-engage on the subjects that were covered during the week. This past week, my son started a new show, the Erudition Generation show, and that started so that they could be able to reach people in their peer groups and talk about things that are going on right now, and also to reflect on how they see things as young people, to give them a voice for the issues and the things that are facing us in today's day and age. I give this time on Saturdays. It's usually not that long. I think last Saturday I was on for about an hour due to the fact that we had people that actually came on and asked questions, and those who weren't here during the week. So I welcome that we get people on, or if not, we'll be on and off, touching in and getting on off of here. It's not something for us to do a full session if it is not needed. It's just to re-engage. That's really what this is. So it is up to the people who are actually watching and paying a part of it. So over this last week, we covered a lot of different things. Hold on a moment. All righty. Sorry, I had to cut off of there for a moment. So, as always, we tried to talk about this week. There was a lot about where we are in the Black community as the end of coming out of Black History Month into this new, which is now the Women's History Month. We talked a little bit about Black health this week. Tina talked about it on her show on Monday, going back into it and talking about the health concerns and treatments and things for Black people. And we hinted on the idea of slave medicine, or I hate to say it that way, or the medicine of Black people, and how it has been utilized and taking over. So we touched on, she touched on that, and then I went further in it on Thursday a little bit and talking about some of the treatments and things that people have used. So yes, we usually come on, Janarius, on Saturday evenings to do the wrap up. We'll be doing this every week. I'm sorry about that. That's my door opening. Someone's opening a door in the house. That's what that noise was. But we come back on to kind of re-engage and talk about what's going on, what we've gone over for the last week. But as I was saying, we went over a lot of different things about medicine and health and how to live better, live healthily, and touching on how that would, what we learned from our people, from our ancestors, what we should have learned from our ancestors. A lot of things that were not necessarily provided or have been passed on to us. And so we kind of touched on that this week on multiple different programs. When the boys came on with their program, they talked about some of the things that they see in the news and in the culture. The young man that was accosted for at his teacher and wound up attacking his teacher, and how code words and things were used to state that young man, he was big and he was 207 pounds and he was 6'5", and all of these different things that were said to basically profile this young man, who very few people talked about the fact that he was on the spectrum and that he had learning disability. But it was all about how he attacked this teacher who took his video game. And so they talked heavily about that on their show, and how people, particularly some cultures of people, are given the benefit of the doubt over others, right? So that was a huge part of the discussion over this last week. Amongst those other things, we try to really every week with Erudition, we try to give you something that is historic, that is something that for your mental health, for your well-being. The new programs are really on here with the boys to now appeal to younger people, to their peer group, to get them and engage them in talking about what is going on in the society, what is going on in the world. I did a lot of talking on my show this week about how a lot of things were taken from us as far as medical understanding. I went into some of the doctors who were world renowned and were given a lot of exposure and consideration for things that they really took from slaves. You look at major hospitals with names of white men on those hospitals, who themselves had to admit that they took a lot of their education and understanding and solving of disease from Black practitioners. I shouldn't say practitioners, Black medicine people, and curing things that were killing both Black and white and indigenous people, right? We talked about Rush Hospital being named after Benjamin Rush, and how Benjamin Rush, in trying to cure yellow fever, had gone in and actually taken the advice of blacks, right? And here you have a man who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, well respected for medicine in his day and age as a practitioner, and he had to give way to what Africans, what blacks, slaves had figured out on how to cure and to stop yellow fever. So if we look at the influence of a Benjamin Rush, that here we are, we have Rush Hospital in Chicago still named after this person, right? But no one remembers the slaves, the enslaved people who helped him to treat and cure disease. So we went into that pretty heavily, because I wanted us to touch onto that history and have a really good understanding as to why we are where we are when it comes down to medicine and our understanding of it. But those are the things that we covered this week. As I said, this program is really for us to kind of rehash and to give you an opportunity, if you weren't able to join us live, to ask a question or to ask questions about history that I can address and answer for you live. So if you are out there and you have a question right now, I think we have 3 people online. Please feel free to ask any question for the little bit of time that we have on. If we don't have any, then we will close down this session, as this is really just a wrap up and we don't have to be on as long. I just want to give you the opportunity to engage. So if you have something, please drop it in the chat, and I am willing to answer that and to give that time to whatever questions that you have. While we're waiting to see if anyone has a question, let me talk about something else here. So next week, I was trying to figure out where we were going to go next week. What history should we tackle? And I'm usually informed of that by either what people send me through Erudition channels, whether they send it on Facebook or they put something in the chat on YouTube or whatever. I'm usually informed of where we will go with our programming, or at least where I'm going to go with the history by that. But I was trying to figure out where to go with the history, because I think some of that there's look at how I look at it. There is a huge amount of history to cover, and I can go my own way and to say, okay, well, let's cover this particular subject. But a lot of times I try to base that off of the audience. I really try to give the audience the opportunity to tell us what it is we're going to talk about. But I do believe that we need to start getting further into some early world history. I think so much is said about slavery. So much is said about the dominance and what happened and how our people were enslaved, that very little is touched upon in the nature of actual Black history before slavery. And so I want to start getting back into that. We had done a series about a month or two ago called The African in History, where we talked a lot about how the African played into it, and where we, how we influence parts of the world. But I think we need to go further into that, because I think that from what I've been hearing online and what I have seen, there is a lot of confusion. There is still a lot of confusion. We need to talk about those coastal communities that were built along the edges of the African coast. We need to talk about how Vasco da Gama, who took his route from Portugal to India, and is given all of this credit for the East African coast exploration. We need to talk about what Africans did well before that. Because before we give Vasco da Gama this kind of credit, we need to start to talk about how we influenced a lot of the areas of the world. And then start to get into the idea of how all of this plays into the Iberian Peninsula that you see around Spain, Portugal, and Italy, and how the Moors became involved. Because I think that as we get more into that history, we can start to understand how the Christian and Islamic parts play into African history. No profit in cures. We as a people have knowledge of self innately. What can we dismiss as old wives' tales and holistic medicine, our historical knowledge of medicine? Well, it's a good question, Daenerys. As I was saying the other day on the program, I think that the best thing to do is to go and read here's the thing. A lot of the cures that we talk about are actually in the narratives. They're in slave narratives. If you go read a lot of the older slave narratives, you will find that they talk about a lot of herbal treatments and cures, and they go into this. Now, here's the thing. We know that these things exist because even the whites put it in their history. I gave the example the other day about garlic rum, which is called spring tonic, right? Where they would go and put that garlic in there with wine, and that was a drink. And that the slaves would give that before the days of during the spring, right? Before the first sunny or warmer days of the spring. And it was supposed to do was to give you strength, energy, right? They understood the purpose of garlic. They understood the purpose of how to use ginger. And there are many, many books on that. And if you go back and look at the actual broadcast that I did this week, I actually put a lot of the books that I know of in the chat so that you can go in there and you can pull those books up and you go read them. And many of them are free. You don't have to go back because they've been derived. People have gone in and they've pulled those from the narratives. But if you still want to know more, go and look at the slave narratives. They are telling you these things are in here, right? These old medical remedies. Because here's the thing. Here's what is never really considered. The fact is that when you go look at the narratives, the slave narratives, you will find that when the United States started to go back, right, and go and interview people, these slaves, these people who had been slaves, they did it years upon years later, well after Reconstruction, going into the early 1900s. And some of these people were 89, 90, some over 100 years old. Now, we're told that African Americans suffer from diseases and ailments because of the slave diet. We're told that our ancestors didn't eat well, so they died young. We're told that things like diabetes and high blood pressure and all of these things are just indicative in our bloods. But what we're not told is that our ancestors learned how to use garlic, chinaberry tea, Jerusalem oak, tansy leaves, peach tree leaves, what they call snake root. We see people walking around talking about sage, but don't understand what slaves actually used the sage for. Pine needles, right? Sea myrtle, and so many other different things that they used to treat ailments, to stop sore throats, to stop backache, footache, elderberry, right? Wintergreen, so many different roots and plants. And then, because as I talked about a couple of months ago, their interaction with the indigenous people, right? Their interaction with the indigenous people taught them what they were using. And so the Maroons, those slaves who escaped from the plantation and lived an indigenous life along with the Native Americans, they learned from them also. So they knew how to treat and how to address illness. They knew how to use herbs, and people went to them, right? And for these things, to be able to solve some of the illnesses that they had. And we can follow that from the 1700s into the 1800s and the Old West, even into the early 1900s, right? How people dealt with measles, how they dealt with smallpox, how they dealt with chickenpox, how they dealt with asthma, how they dealt with colic. All of these different things that we no longer know. But here's the rub. Yet we have natural health stores who will go back and take these what they call Eastern concoctions from the Asian Americans. They will go back and take Native American poultices and concoctions, and nobody ever gives the credit to the Africans who ate particular vegetables and made particular meals to clean folks out, to take away the impurities. And so we are told that every illness that African Americans have that kills them early has to do with the slave diet, but we never talk about the full slave diet. So there are definitely books to read that will help you to better understand these things, but we have to start to teach it. We have to start to teach it. And unfortunately, we do not. Unfortunately, we do not. And so many of us fall into the trap of believing that it's hoodoo voodoo, because that's the other issue that they played us. Don't take any of these things because they were doing hoodoo. When in fact, all it really was using what was available by God on the earth. And the very people who advised blacks to not follow it were the ones who would go find the old mammy or the slave and ask her to heal their child. That's just the truth. I named one of the books, what is that guy's name? William Postill's book, The Health of Slaves on Southern Plantations, is a really good book. And you will go in there and you will find how much of this natural things that slaves and Native Americans were using. Go read Herbert Boyce's The History of the Negro in Medicine. That's another one. Or read Todd Savitt's Medicine and Slavery, right? Those are books that are out here that you can go pick up and go look at, that are more modern books. I think they're from the 60s and the 70s. But I think you will still get a lot from those books because, again, this is not a subject that we really focus on heavily. FDA is drugs. They can't judge natural immunity in herbs. That's why they can't approve them, which is true. But here's the thing. If you go pick up a vitamin bottle, I was looking to see a vitamin bottle right now, most of the things that you will find in the slave narratives are, or if you will go look up Native American remedies, you will find that's where they got those things from. That's where they got it from. I talked about Thursday on how people wash themselves, how they used to wash themselves. People they use soap derived from animal fat. However, slaves didn't necessarily use that. Slaves found other things too in order to wash their bodies that always gave them a clean look, a smell and look. They knew what to put into their clothing for the females when they were on their menstrual. There is so much of our history that is taken and hidden, and yet it's there. And the question is never asked why or how they were able to do these things. In many ways, we always see people play the slave out as dirty, filthy. They had very limited clothes that the master provided to them, and they had to be able to survive day in and day out in hot, sweaty environment and stay clean to avoid away disease. And they did that by living and doing the things that they had learned from their African ancestors that they brought over here to get them through slavery. This is why, if you go and you look, Africans by culture are very clean. We're told about the dirty African and the filthy savage, but they are very clean. And they did things to stay clean, right? They did things to stay clean. But we're not told that. We're not provided that. The idea of cleaning your system, what is a natural laxative, to flush out impurities. Caucasians did use lye, but they also used things in which they decided to use that were harsh on their skin. And many times the Caucasians, their practice, their cultural practices were different. You can go look through the Germans, through the English, through the British, through the French. They did not believe, and even looking into the Old West and to the early settlers here, colonists, they did not believe in washing all the time because they believed that washing your body opened your pores up to disease. The complete opposite of what Moors and Africans believe, that keeping your body clean was godly. And so that's two different philosophies that showcases why. Because I said it Thursday, and I'll say it again. I asked, why would the master always go pick a woman who's been out in the field from can't see to can't see, got to be dirty and her body, she's been laboring? But that's the thing. They weren't dirty. They cleaned themselves nightly. They treated their families. They ensured that their health was right. Ways to clean the blood, ways in order to clean out the systems, ways to stay healthy and stay strong, to purify the water that you were drinking. We forget that in the Old West, many times the whites did not know how to purify the water. This is why they fermented beer. They didn't know how. They were getting sick from drinking in streams and lakes without the knowledge of how to purify it. And then they would die. They would pass disease in their water, drinking out of contaminated streams where people had gone in and defecated or took baths. Slaves understood. I shouldn't say slave. Africans understood the better way to do that. We always give the connotation, let's go down to the river, as a religious thing, but we don't realize that the river provided a lot of different things. A lot of things. The river also was important for Maroon culture, because all the Maroon had to do was follow the stream, the river, drop off items, pick up items from the plantation, bring back information, help people escape. So there is a lot of our things about our culture that we covered this week. And I hope that you go back and you watch it and you get something from it. Yes. Fasting, hydrating. We call it cleanse now. But they knew how to cleanse. What to eat and what not to eat. How to numb the body. Things like nightshade and things like that. How much could you give that would kill, and how much you could give that could numb and make a person feel comfortable and relaxed when they were in extreme pain? That is gone from us in many ways. Old folks who knew it are gone, and it wasn't passed down. We have to go back and learn these things and teach these things. But it's out here. We live in a generation in an information age. Just is up to us to go back and find it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Janaris, I thank you for being on here with us for the time that you're on here. Like I said, I don't typically do this for an hour unless you got questions. If you got questions, I'll be on here. But if you don't, we'll beat you again next Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then we'll do another wrap up next Saturday. I thank every one of you who consistently shares and grows the Erudition Network. We're trying very hard to do more, to bring attention to more, to fact attack things that are not factual and actual, and basically to grow our knowledge and our understanding, which is a huge part of what we do. But I understand that it's late in the evening. It's 9 o'clock in Chicago. It's 8 o'clock here. But I just always like to give this time on Saturday just for us to be able to have some further discussions. I see Janaris was in here, and I really do appreciate those discussions because we need to have them. But if you all don't have any other questions, any other thing you'd like me to go into, we've been on for about 34 minutes now. I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. But I'll give you that time to inflect. If there's something that you would like to discuss, go over, we definitely will do that. Oh, no, my brother, all the time. I believe that we got to share, that we got to grow. And I think that the only way to do that is to provide information as often as we can, and to definitely try to help people who have the desire for knowledge, but may lack the understanding of how to get it. And that's a huge part. What do you mean, what is the next step? If you're talking about as far as us, I think that what we're going to do on this network is we have to do more as far as teaching. But if you're talking about as a culture, I think our next step is that we got to get into a mentality of talking to each other, getting involved with each other, debating, not arguing. Debating is different. Having different discussions with each other so we can grow. The community has to be a community. And we have to become a very strong community again. And I constantly hear from older people, well, we just so lost. Well, everybody can be lost. Everybody doesn't have to stay lost. Children of Israel were lost in the wilderness. They didn't stay lost forever, though. We have to help us ourselves find who we are. Those who are knowledgeable, those who are well read, the bibliophiles, the academics, those who care. And we have to bring people into a community of discussion. That's why I encourage people on Erudition to drop questions and to leave things here for Tina's show, for the boys' show, for my show, for everything, so that we can answer it. That's why the boys on their program this past Wednesday said, even if you need work help on history, drop us a question. Tell us, right? Hey, I don't know if this is right. This didn't sound right to me in my class on any level. And I'd like to know if this is correct, or I may need some help where could I go to find out about this person or this subject? Utilizing our community to help each other. And I think if we do that, we will strengthen our young folks, our older folks. We could discuss our history and be engaged. No longer feeling like I don't know, I don't want to participate in history, I don't want to know about history or science or any of this stuff because it's nothing to do with me. And in reality, your culture has a lot to do with how these things came to be. I discuss a lot of things about the gift of Black folks using W.B. Du Bois's book. The same name. That gift of Black folks is important, right? How do we contribute to the soldiers, to the military? How do we contribute to labor? How do we contribute to religion? How do we contribute to literature? How do we contribute to law? If you feel included, then you can stick your chest up a little higher. You have more confidence in yourself because you know your culture played a part in something. Too often, our people, our children, our young folks, everybody, they don't see that. They don't feel connected. Young woman on TikTok sent me a message saying, I never liked history. I wasn't included in it. Nobody wants to keep hearing that they're a slave. This is why a little while ago, even here on the wrap up, I said we got to get into talking about our history again, our unknown empires, how we contributed to the knowledge of the world. What are the African proverbs? What are the African understandings? What did we get from our people? Because if we could start talking on that level and get people to start thinking on that level beyond 1619 and start talking more about 415 BCE, right? 800 BCE. Start talking about anything that happened before enslavement, anything that took place before rebellion of the European. We'll be smarter. We'll be smarter. We'll be wiser. And I'm even talking about even before Islam, before the idea of the Islamic fundamental understanding that pervaded Africa. And that is true. Not all of us were in ships. Many of us were here already. Great point. Factual point. I think I talked a little bit about that this past week too. Because see, we teach our kids so much stuff about history, but European history, our glorious revolution, the Renaissance, the Battle of Waterloo, the 100-Year War, right? We teach the Spanish Armada. We teach about all of the kings and queens and the rulers of Europe. But we don't teach our people about the Garifuna people of the Caribbean. We don't teach them about the first Caribbean War in 1769, before America was established, and how the British had to recognize that these people who were in the Caribbean, Black people, and who had been there from as early as 700 BC, how did they get there? They didn't come as slaves. We don't teach kids about battles that are worthwhile. The Battle of Adwa. I think I posted that the other day. 1896. The British were forced to accept the Ethiopian independence. I didn't say that they just accept, they were forced to. But if you don't know this, and you're only taught about the colonizer, how do you grow? How do you grow? So I spent a lot of time a couple of months ago talking about Maroons, because I got tired of hearing people tell me that their families are Native American and not understanding that your family had interaction with Native Americans, but they are African, and that they had a tricultural society that intermingled with the Native Americans. And so though you may have Cherokee in your blood, though you may have these other tribes in your blood, that doesn't mean that that's one is greater than the other. Spain not only was run, and Italy had issues with the Moors, but let's understand that when Spain came out with the Esencia del Negro, their whole point for 100 years was to stifle the influence of Africans, Black people, in European life. But also with the idea of the integration of the Moors in their societies, right? There's another part here. There's another part here too that went on, right? The idea that they were a fused society for a while. And a lot of people don't want to face that. They don't want to face that reality. Because, see, I talked about it last week. There's a difference between conquering and trading and integration. There is a difference. And the European did not come to integrate. He came to conquer. That's what he came to do. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But that's just the truth. I don't know any cultures in the world that probably were as generous, I should say, as the African. And I'm not saying that to be braggadocious. I'm saying that because that's just the truth. They had the desire to come over and integrate and work with natives. We know this because the natives, when approached by future European imperialists, right? They told them what happened. They told them that Africans came to help them. told them about the spears and the gold and everything that the Africans shared with them on how to do things. And if you know anything about the west coast of Africa, you will know that they were very, very, very skilled in metalwork all along the west coast of Africa. That's a historical fact. So who better to show you how to mold your spears and how to create these weapons than them? Africans believed in the idea of, and I gave that word last week, syncretism. Syncretism. Syncretism is a huge word. It's a word that I don't think a lot of people is generally in their vocabulary. But syncretism is important because syncretism means that you're combining ideas of two cultures to make a whole, to form something new, not to dominate over one idea over the other, not a war. Syncretism simply means to bring things together. The Africans and the indigenous people of the early Americas, they participated in syncretism. And we misunderstand that when we start saying to ourselves, well, I'm a Seminole, well, I got Cherokee in me, and I got this in me, Blackfoot in me, and I got that, and I got this. And I understand that you have who you are. You're a child of the African who integrated with the Native American. And they hid your ancestors, allowed them to become part of their tribes, to marry, to grow. That's why Black explorers were able to interact with the Indian tribes far better than Spanish, Portuguese, and European explorers. That's why they sent them in before, because they had already had interaction. But here we are, again, not learning this in schools. Now, even more so, not learning it in schools and not learning our history. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've been on here for a while. I hope you got something from this wrap up. I hope you continue to get something from the wrap up. We will continue to do this on Saturday evenings. Join us this coming Monday. Tina will be on 4 o'clock Mountain Standard Time here in Denver, 5 o'clock Central Standard Time in Chicago. The boys will be on same time, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. And I will be here at 5 to 5 o'clock Denver time, 6 o'clock Chicago time on Thursdays. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on social media as we grow this network and this influence and this understanding. Tell people to come join us. If you find something on social media that does not agree with you, that does not sound right, encourage that person on that show. Hey, why don't you go and talk to the person on the Erudition Network? Send them on to any one of these programs. We'll gladly have a discussion with them, and we'll pull out what the actual truth of something is, and we can all learn together, because you know that is a huge part of what we do here. We want everybody to learn together. But I'm going to get off of here and let you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Until next week, you be blessed, and you be strong. And yeah, we'll talk our talk and help us to grow. But until next week, you all be blessed. Thank you again, and we will see you next week.